In this video help, we're going to be covering these two buttons down here and what they do. But before we do that, we're going to go through some of these other buttons and explain them a little further. One of the things I want to point out, where I had the commission, I explained it earlier. I want to update this to say that if you are using the sold like this, it calculates based on the commissions and adds those commissions down here. If you're doing your own sold for selling something of your own or items that have passed their time and were donated to the store, then what you would do is you would take the sold store right here, and what I want you to watch is that the percentages are not going to change up here, but the calculation down here will occur. So if we're in sold, we're splitting the commissions as they're shown up here. If you do sold store, you'll notice that the commission went 100% to the store. And where this comes in handy is when you're, say, in somebody else's record and they've forfeited the item because they did not come back and pick it up. What you would do is go ahead and use the sold store where you're going to get the commission for your store. And it'll put the, obviously take the sold amount that this item sold for minus certain things like the sales tax is not, well, we do have sales tax depending on the item, but the buyer's fee or none of that shows up in here. But this says 0 and 32.77, and of course it didn't take the discount, but that's where it's at because you don't discount your own record. Okay, so let's go to the next item. Go over to the portal, and in the portal you saw that same thing over there, how we change it. It changes over here the same way, where right now I'm going to change it back to sold. And you'll see that the changes over here as well. One of the other things I was going to show you, and we're going to be moving to that now, we already had the consignor store credits, where we had a little pop-up over here that we showed on the other screen, which was the popover. It just shows you that in this screen as well. And whenever you're doing items in the screen where you have labels that you want to print and attach either to a tag or stick them on with a glue stick on whatever item it may be, what you can do is you pick the records in a set that you want to. And typically what most of my users do, as they consign items, they have a date up here when they were consigned. And you do a little formula. Say, for example, let's say that this is June the 10th. So to speak, and we want to do June 30th is the last day. So what you would type in this field up here, let's go ahead and back out the test note. You would go ahead and say less than or equal to, and put the date that you want to put in there as far as the date that starts with, and it would be say we'll do 6/1 and let's say 2016 or 2017, pardon me. And then on the opposite side of this, say like we want to encompass a whole month, but it could also be maybe the current date. If you're going to do the current day, you can do a search based on the current date if you're doing them daily, and just leave this in and put the date for the current date, and it'll bring those records up and make them the current selection of records. Then you would go to the labels, and those records would show up to have their labels printed. The way to stop this, is to say greater, whoops, I did it backwards. It has to be greater than or equal to, and that's why I show you these things. If you make a mistake, what it's going to do, it's not going to move toward the end date. The end date is less than or equal to, and then you, whoops, I did it again. Can't hold down the, there it goes. Less than or equal to, greater than, less than. Bear with me a second. 17 less than, which is this, or equal to, and then you'd put the other date in. Say like I wanted 6/15/2017, then that would be the date that you want to stop the actual run of all the records. And like I said before, if you use the current date up here, and just that, all those items that are in after the search will be showing up in the list view when you go ahead and click on the list view. So I'll just leave this in here for somebody to see and ask questions. The next thing I want to do is to show you the consignment report. Looking at all this data here, a lot of this data will be brought over into the report inclusively, and give you the report where you can pay your commissions and do other things that you want to do over there. I want to point out before I go there, though, we have a thing for the people that have Square. What happens is it takes the icon, the consignor ID and the item ID, and it makes it a dash item, so that when you're going to use Square and they want to have a SKU, you could have a SKU based on all the items that you have. And say, for example, I put 10 items in today, and I want to download those items, the information for the sheet that puts these into a upload sheet to SKU, for the SKUs to Square. I have a special report that does that and then sends them up, and it'll create a sheet in Excel. When you say export, you can export those items from the Do Action menu. You can say export the current items, going down here to the export right here. If you can export them in Excel right off the bat, you're in good shape. And what will happen, that you can pick the fields when you do export. Just another way to do it. You can pick, for example, like the date, the description, and the price, and all those kind of things that you want to make on the Excel spreadsheet. So if they give you some kind of a different kind of a format to use, you can use the export right here, or save as an Excel. And if you save in Excel, it's still going to ask you what fields you want to use. Okay, let's move on to the report. The consignment report is really a summation of each individual item, where it shows for the consignor at this level the name of the consignor, and the amount of the sold is the same one that goes up and up as you sell more items. The item ID is used along with the consignor ID, where you see the consignor ID here and the item ID here. This is the name of the consignor. This is the consignor percent for the consignor. And since I'm making a bogus record, that's me. That's who would be getting the consigned item percentage. The consignor commission would be 13.41. And on the date that you actually pay the consignor, you would put that date in here for commissions paid to the consignor. And that could be also the due date. And this is the date that they actually received the payment. This is the consigned date. This is the date that this item was added to the inventory. Now, but bear in mind that any of the data here is actually created in the last screen I showed you, and this you don't have to edit at all. It basically comes in as you add it. Go ahead and put the, except for when you actually pay the consignor, you can do it here and show the amount that you actually paid him. So here's the ID we just looked at. This is the description of the item that automatically comes over. The category comes over, but yet gives you the ability to use search to find it, or to change it if it was wrong. The quantity of items that were sold, the size, the item sold date is the date that you actually on the invoice put in the sold date, the store percentage and how much the store got, the buyer's fee. Now the buyer's fee, we said, was the amount of money that could be added to the actual value of what the item was that was sold. So it's not commissionable, but it is, the store owns all that money, and we're going to talk about it, how that is found. Then its store commission paid would be the store commission. This item would be put in here, and it should already show up when it's been sold, so it should have been there. If you have a shipping fee and you did it on the invoice, this also would be done on the invoice. When you do it on the invoice, it comes over and fills in these two fields. The sales tax is put in there for the item itself, not all of them. The discount, if there was a discount, will be put in here. And you can do that from the invoice. You can add a discount. The sold at price is this item here. Sell the price with the buyer's fee. The buyer's fee is included in the item sold. And what happens, you don't really do anything about that in here. You do it all in the invoice, and I'll be showing that in that video. This will also be added in the video for the invoice. The sell at price will be in there also. The recon fee will be there, and the buyer's fee. Now, these numbers here are the summary of the items that are most important for you to track as far as your income and expenses. So you have the commission to the consignor, the paid commission amount, and you could put that in and actually pay when you pay the consignor. If you could use this report to go ahead and put into selection all the items that were sold during a day. We already showed you how to do the consign days, or actually in this case it would be the item sold days you would use, just like we showed you over this, did that formula where we said greater than or equal to or less than or equal. You could pick out for a period when you're going to actually make payments and put the sold date in that calculation. And what it'll do is it'll only show the records that include sold and that date. And if you're really just looking for one person, you can put their ID in there and sold items for that particular date span. And then that would give you the option to get all the commissions and everything for that particular consignor, and it would show down in the records in here. Now, what happens, you can show the paid consignor sum that you paid him for all the items that you have in selection here. So if you had 3 of these records here, this should show the sum of all the commissions for the consignor. This would show the sum of the buyer's fees if they were in there. Now, buyer's fees are shown down below that in a summary, grand summary. If I had multiple records in here, then it would show the multiple amount here, and the singular for each one of these up here is a summary. Now, if I had multiple records in here, it would summarize for the person in selection, this one with the ID that way. It'll summarize that record. If it did another guy's ID up here, then it would start all over again and show the top, the header, and then all the items for them, and then it would summarize both of them together down here. So this is kind of nice if you want to do an entire month and see all the items that were sold. I would do it this way. I'd put in my calculation for the period of time from the first of the month to whatever day you're going to stop and show the commissions that need to be paid, say the end of the month. So maybe this comes from March 1 to March 31st. Click on it and put in sold. Then go ahead and run the records for that period. You have to have sold in there, it'll show them all. So make sure you put sold in there for that record period of time, okay? And it'll show the summary for each individual ID for consignor ID, and the items records will be in here one after the next for all the items. And it's subsummed here and then grand summed down here. Like I said before, if you put a date range and only sold, and you don't indicate a consignor ID. If you did get consignor ID along with the sold and the date, it'll only show those items for that consignor. Or if you don't put in the consignor ID, it will show you all of that period, all the sold stuff for that period. And you can still add them and put their dates, commissions, and all that kind of stuff, and write checks and do all that stuff. And then it, of course, would give you the grand summary for all the items that you're working in, for all the consignors that are in the records in selection. Now, again, this is the days since listed, and this was sold. It was sold the 24th day. So the obvious thing is it was sold, put in on June 6th and sold on June 30th for 24 days from the time it was listed. Now, this number up here will never stop running. It just, since this item was inserted into the system, that day is running all the time. And so, for example, say this went over the 90 days, this would continue to run. This would continue to run, but it gives you the days when it was listed from. And this stops when you have a date of sold on there. It'll stop this particular thing from running. So actually, obviously, this is fairly old. It was 655 days ago, but it was sold on the 24th day after it was listed. And then this tells you how long, forever it's been since it's been in the system. Okay, if you do a search, make sure that once you finish the search to click this Run Report button, because anytime you do a search, it's going to only show, it'll show the headers when you do this Run Report. It'll put that information at the very top. Page setup, the reason it has a page setup on this, if you want to print a larger area, like all the way out to here, make it a landscape print, and then all this data will be printable on the screen. You may have to mess with the page setup to shrink it down a little bit so that it fits on whatever kind of paper you're using. Because when you go to print, there's multiple sizes of paper that you can select. For European, it may be an A4, and of course in the US it'd probably be an 8.5 by 11, and you put it in landscape. Same thing for landscape for your other stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this out of here. And if you want to edit the record, click here, and you go back to the main screen that you're on. We did the store credit. Let's pop over and show you the labels. The labels are going to work for all the records in selection using the formula for the date range. And what will happen is that they will show you all the records, and if you're on the computer and you put the header show it so that it shows at the top, let's go back over here and go to the do action and say show toolbars. Now when you go in here this time and you go over to let's go ahead and get it off the screen. You have to click on it. Anywhere you click off of it, it should take it off the screen. And now what I want to do is I want to show you the labels. And now you have the ability to preview the labels. Unfortunately, I've only got one item in here, or what it would do is it go down the page and it would show you all the items in here for the size of the screen. It should be 3 wide for 30 items, because this should be in portrait view. So what you'd want to do, you want to go to page setup and put the page setup into portrait and then say OK, and you can see that the page now is for portrait, 3 wide and enough to have 30 items on the screen. And this, by the way, if you call technical support or our website and you want to have these labels changed, there's a small charge for that, but we'll charge you for that. And or if you need more than one size for some reason, we can create another page for you that you can select from the menu or from the page over here. And this one I want to show you. You have to be out of preview, so get out of here, and now you can go back to editing the screen. Okay, so we did labels, we looked at the store credit, we did the consignment report. For this video, the only thing I want to show you is if you have time, you can play the list view, and the list view is for that screen. I might be showing this a second time. The list view shows you the basic information at the bottom of the screen. It also shows the calculation. Now what I need to do here is I need to go up and I need to change back and say where it says show toolbar, click it again and it disappears. What it does is it takes it off the screen this time. And in this case I'm going to have to move this up slightly, about to there. So if I went back to a different screen on the map, that it would be showing the entire screen, like consignor data. Yeah, it's a little fat, but not much. So that looks good. Okay, the next thing we're going to do in the next video is we're going to go to the buyer's listing, and we're going to do things that look at the add invoices. Plus we're going to be, at one point, we're going to go through each and every screen here and show you what those screens do for the ones that we have not shown you already. Okay. The next video we're going to go to will be the buyer's listing.